Somehow, this TV has become the subject of some controversy, and I think that's a shame because there's nothing controversial about this TV. In most meaningful ways, it is exceptional. It's even one of the two most prominent professional TV shootouts held this year. And yet, if you've been doing research, you might have noticed there's a lot of discussion around this TV. Not all the comments are glowing, and maybe that's caused some concern for you. Maybe you're hesitant to purchase. So what's the real story? What's going on? I'm going to tell you things about this TV that nobody else has told you. I'm also going to weigh in on normal review stuff, like how well this TV does in a bright room. How good does it sound? Does it have any HDMI bugs? And is it worth the price you'll pay? And yes, if you want to see it compared to the A95L, we'll do a little bit of that too. Let's dive into the Sony Bravia 8 Mark II QD OLED TV. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Caleb Dennison, and today, finally, I get to give you my take on the Bravia 8 Mark II. Now, whether you're familiar with my reviews or not, you should know this isn't going to be a typical review for me. There's going to be some commentary about this TV that has more to do with discussions I've heard around this model, in addition to just the straight performance appraisal. I'm doing it this way for a few reasons. One, I feel like I have a responsibility to share my industry knowledge and understanding with everyone and see if I can't bring some folks together. And two, there's a lot of great reviews about this TV out there already, and I don't want to drag you through a bunch of information that you already know. Now, if you're totally new to this channel, well, first of all, welcome. But you might also be interested to know that I first got to see this TV much earlier this year during a trip to Tokyo with Sony and a bunch of other amazing people. This is B-roll from that trip from my producer, Zeke, because I can't use any of the B-roll that I shot from that trip. The reason I can't use that B-roll is also the reason I'm so late to this review. Now, in the before times, I would probably have been the first person to review this TV, but some things happen. You don't have to look too hard to learn what. And here we are now. But again, I gotta say, as crappy as that experience was, in the end, I'm grateful that it didn't work out that way because I have a different perspective and an opportunity now. I'm also really grateful to Sony for their support before, during, and after, and for sending me this TV to review like the second I was ready to review it. Okay, with that backstory dispatched, here's the other backstory, summed up as briefly as I can possibly make it. Now, if you want to skip this part to learn what I think of the Bravia 8 Mark II's performance, we have time codes down in the description that'll help you do just that. So if you go to cecritic.com and you take a look at the CE Critic score for the Bravia 8 Mark II, that's like a Rotten Tomatoes score that's based largely off the scores that, in this case, it was 8 professional reviewers gave this TV. You'll notice that the Bravia 8 Mark II gets an 89%. So how is it that a TV with an aggregate score that amounts to a B- managed to ace the exam at 2 shootouts in which a bunch of video professionals declared that the Bravia 8 Mark II was the best of the bunch? Well, there's your controversy, right? The reviewers say it's really good, but it's getting lower scores than other great TVs like the LG G5 and the Panasonic Z95B. And not just because of its higher price, they're saying things like the Bravia 8 Mark II's white balance is a bit too cool or too blue out of the box, or that it's not bright enough in SDR for bright rooms. Meanwhile, a bunch of experts, and they really are experts, they declare it's the best of the bunch. So what's going on? Is someone on the take? Who got what wrong? I mean, who are we to believe? Well, guys, and you may not like what I'm about to do here, but I don't have much of a choice. The answer comes down to this. TV reviews are in need of some help right now. I almost want to say TV reviews are broken right now, except they aren't completely useless. That would be going too far. But what I will say is that a lot of publications got it wrong with this TV. Now, some of that statement is subjective opinion, but some of it is objective fact, which is appropriate because it is the objective versus subjective evaluation of this TV, or maybe the lack of subjective evaluation, that has done the Bravia 8 Mark II dirty. Now, I'm going to leave the full explanation of why TV reviews are supposedly broken for a dedicated video. I'm sorry, you're just gonna have to wait. I have questions out to a number of sources, and I need to wait until I get answers back because I'm not just trying to pump out an opinion piece here. However, I am going to treat you to a little bit of inside info here. I just don't want to put anyone to sleep. So here's the easiest to understand version. For decades now, many TV manufacturers have based their TV's color processing or color math calculations on something called the CIE 1931 color matching function, or CMF. It was developed in 1931, folks. We're 6 years away from it being a century old, but it works. And by default, CalMan, the software that many TV reviewers and professional calibrators use to measure, adjust, and then remeasure TVs, that software defaults to CIE 1931 to do its math and take its measurements and provide its results, telling users like me and other reviewers whether the TV is putting out accurate whites and grays and colors. Now, I believe, based on some evidence that I've gathered, some of which comes from white papers published by Sony, that Sony might be using a much more modern CIE 170-2 color matching function, which was developed in 2015. This more modern CMF was designed to be an improvement over that older 1931 standard, particularly for, pay attention here, particularly for TVs with narrowband emitters like OLED TVs. Okay, so why does all that sciencey stuff matter? Well, if you're using CalMan software to measure a Sony OLED TV, and Sony is indeed using this newer CMF 170-2, as I suspect it is, and you don't change this option in CalMan from old school CIE 1931 to new school CIE 170-2, what's gonna happen? Well, I'll show you. Here are some measurements on this TV using the CIE 1931 setting. Notice how the white point and color errors are, well, higher than we might expect. Now, here's the same TV measured using 170-2, and would you look at that? It's passing the tests with, dare I say it, flying colors. You can roast me for that later. For now, do you follow what I'm saying here? If reviewers are relying very heavily on measurements to determine whether this TV is doing a good job, and those measurements aren't exactly correct, well, the TV might get an unfairly low score in some regards. At the very least, I guarantee you this would have reviewers scratching their heads, maybe getting in their heads, all because they might not know to make this one adjustment to a default setting in a piece of software. But that's not all. Measuring the brightness of a TV has also gotten complicated. Some TVs are programmed to ace the test, but they don't perform as well out in the field. Other TVs focus on performing well with real content and just don't worry about acing a test. Now, some would argue that getting programmed to ace a test is shady business. I get that, but I would also argue if the reviewers kind of control the fate of your success and they use this test, then maybe it's on reviewers that the problem exists. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Regardless, let's just see if this TV is bright enough in SDR to look good while watching in the daytime. It is daytime here. There's a lot of white light outside. I've opened up the drapes and the blinds. It's bright in this room, even without the studio lights on. And you know what? The TV looks pretty good to me. Seems much brighter in SDR than its measurements would seem to suggest it would look. So there's just one example of where our subjective evaluation tells us something quite conclusively that an objective test failed to indicate. And that's frustrating because the intention of the objective measurements is to reinforce what we see with our eyes, not argue with it. Problem is, you have to actually sit down and watch the TV for a while and do that subjective evaluation. And I'm not gonna lie, some of the reviews I'm reading makes me wonder how much real world testing was done and whether it was compared to the measurements. Anyway, I should point out that I fully acknowledge that it's easy for me to sit here and make this observation with the benefit of a whole bunch of other folks having done a bunch of work already. Like I said earlier, I'm fortunate to even be able to have this perspective. And that's why I'm not calling out anyone or criticizing anyone. Hindsight is 20/20, and I'm really lucky to have it. But I'm also trying to explain what I think caused a bit of the discrepancy between what reviewers have said and how the Bravia 8 Mark II has fared in professional shootouts and how much favor it has curried from professional calibrators. The reason the Bravia 8 Mark II does so well in shootouts is because it's designed to match a professional reference monitor that is actively used in Hollywood. A monitor that is, by the way, made by Sony's professional division. So does that mean that Sony maybe has a little bit of an upper hand here, an unfair advantage? Other companies can buy that monitor and work to match it too with their TVs if that's what they wanted. So I don't know about that. So does almost perfectly matching this professional reference monitor mean that the Bravia 8 Mark II is a perfect TV? Absolutely not. It's got a few quirks, just like every TV does, one of which might be a deal breaker for some folks. So with all of that inside baseball out of the way, let's talk about how this TV performs in real life. In short, the picture quality is almost always exceptional. Is it bright enough for bright rooms? Absolutely. Hopefully I've adequately demonstrated that for you already. Now, how are the black levels in bright rooms? Well, I've read that they take a big hit, and I disagree with that. I think they take a small hit, but that the black levels on balance look great in a reasonably bright room. Better than the A95L. There's less purple cast than on the A95L, and when you watch actual content, not a blank screen, your impressions of the blacks, at least mine are that they're black. More importantly, the micro contrast is still exceptional. Day or night, I love watching this TV. The color, also exceptional. The cleanup of low bit rate and low bit depth content, top tier. The motion resolution is the best in the industry. I mean, from a processing standpoint in general, I think this TV takes the best in industry award. But it does have one weakness, and that is in low luminance scenes, you can get some posterization, some might call it banding, around dimly lit objects. Some folks might see like magenta or green blocks popping up around, say, candles in a dark room, for example. Now, how often will that be a problem for you? I'm gonna guess probably not super often. I'm not sure some of you will even notice, honestly, but if we're gonna talk about this being a professional grade TV, we're gonna have to give it professional grade scrutiny too. Now, can the LG G5 or Panasonic Z95B with their tandem OLED panels look even brighter in some situations than the Bravia 8 Mark II? Sure, they can do that, and some of you may want that. But what the Sony lacks in like just raw brightness power, it makes up for in so many other ways. If you don't need an absolute light cannon, I think a lot of you would pick the Sony as your favorite as well, mostly because it's still really bright. Now, how about the sound quality? I think the Bravia 8 Mark II is one of the best sounding TVs you can buy, if not the actual best. I just haven't done side-by-side comparisons. But I'll tell you, having the sound aimed at you and your ears from the screen instead of shooting it down at the floor or your entertainment stand, it goes a long way. And the bass response. The bass is not like exceptionally deep, but it is punchy and present and balanced. It doesn't sound like fake bass, which I totally appreciate. Here, I'm gonna switch between this many $1,000 professional audio system and the TV real quick. That's big speakers. Now, I don't know how that's gonna come out for you, but I'm telling you, like, they're surprisingly close. Oh, and it matches perfectly with the Bravia Theater Quad system, even though I still think the Theater Quad's Phantom Center is better overall than using the TV as the center channel. Look, let me leave you with this on the TV sound. I put music on the TV, forgot it was running on the TV, and listened to it while I did chores quite happily for almost an hour. I mean, it sounds really good, and not just for a TV. The Google TV interface, it was trouble-free the entire time I used the TV, but I have heard multiple reports from several very reliable sources that this TV's interaction with devices connected via HDMI can be a little tricky. More specifically, if you're connecting this TV via eARC to an AV receiver and using that AV receiver to switch among many devices, my understanding is that the Bravia 8 Mark II has a rather long EDID readout, and not every receiver can read it all. EDID, by the way, stands for Extended Display Identification Data, and it's essentially a list of instructions and capabilities that it sends out to other devices over HDMI to tell those devices what they can all do or can't do together as a group. Apparently, there's some bugginess involved there, and I have not personally been able to duplicate it because, frankly, I have an Integra receiver that can read the Bravia 8 Mark II's full EDID, and it hasn't caused me any problems. Just know that there could be some communication issues, and that fixing those issues so you can watch what you want to watch when you want to watch it can be a little annoying. Like switching from one HDMI input to another and back, or unplugging HDMI cables and plugging them back in, that sort of thing. The only thing I think you can blame the Bravia 8 Mark II for getting wrong is not being available in a 77-inch size. Sony may have its reasons for not making the 8 II in a 77-inch, but it seems like a lot of folks want it. For now, if you want a 77-inch Sony QD OLED, you need to get an A95L. And guys, I gotta be honest, I love the A95L. Like, it's hard to feel like you're getting second best with that TV. So I personally have a hard time understanding the frustration or consternation that there's no 77-inch 8 Mark II. But I do hear you, and I think your voice deserves to be represented. Speaking of, if you want your opinion to be heard and really count, go to cecritic.com and leave a review for the TV that you own. I'm not interested in your opinion on a TV that you don't actually own, okay? But if you own a TV and wish it did this or that, or wish it were a little bit better here or there, leaving a user review at cecritic.com is the best way to get your voice heard, because I will be taking all of that data directly to brands and trying to affect real change. It's going to be way more powerful than any Amazon review or forum post, I assure you. Help me be the most powerful force in TVs. Okay, back to the Bravia 8 Mark II. It is an exceptional TV. Now, Sony may consider the Bravia 9 its top dog, but in my heart, the Bravia 8 Mark II is Sony's current flagship, and I just adore it. I do think it's a step above the A95L in some meaningful ways, and I don't know that I can say anything more glowing about this TV other than it is so good that it makes me want to watch it all the time. It's a destination TV for me. I go out of my way to watch things on it because I want to see how stuff is going to look on this TV. Now, I suspect that I'll feel that way about the LG G5 and the Panasonic Z95B too. But Sony still has that Sony look that I very deeply enjoy, and I know a lot of other folks do too. So this TV is going to hold a very special place in my heart. To me, it really is the reference standard, and so far, the industry leader. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. What did you think of this video? A little different, but did you like it? Was it helpful? That's the real question. Let me know in the comments. I can't wait to see you in the next video, and until then, take care. EDID, by the way, stands for Extended Display Identification. Not that.